I felt the recycled station air shift before I heard anything. One of those faint pressure changes that told you someone was approaching even before the footsteps arrived. The lower decks of Haven 9 had their own rhythm, buzzing conduits, clanking pipes, and the constant background hum of neglected machinery. But the sound that reached me now was softer, almost hesitant. When I turned, I saw her standing there, thin as a shadow stretched too far, long ears drooping under the weight of exhaustion. Her skin was pale like moonlight filtered through frost, and her black hair hung in tangled, uneven strands. She looked like someone who had forgotten how to stand upright, but was trying anyway because collapsing would require too much dignity. I raised my ration pack slowly, not wanting to spook her. "It's nothing fancy," I said, "but it won't kill you. Probably." The corners of her mouth twitched like the idea of a joke vaguely registered. Then she snatched the pack with both hands and devoured it. No chewing, no savoring, just pure survival. I got worried when she inhaled half the packet sleeve. "Hey, plastic is not a recommended spice here," I added, stepping closer. She froze, blinking at me with wide, startled eyes, then spat the wrapper into her palm and gave a guilty shrug. Up close, I noticed the trembling in her shoulders, the slight metallic scent that clung to her worn clothes. Ion dust, maybe. Refugees from the collapsed outer colonies often carried that smell, like static burned into fabric. I held my hands out in what I hoped was a peaceful, friendly, absolutely not going to get stabbed gesture. She backed away anyway, clutching the empty wrapper like it was a priceless relic. Before I could say anything else, she turned and fled into one of the dim service corridors. I figured that was the end of it. A hungry stranger, a bit of charity, a brief moment of awkwardness, my daily routine, basically. But an hour later, my doorbell chimed, then chimed again, then chimed 5 more times in rapid succession, as if someone tried to summon me like an ancient deity of impatience. When I opened the door, I found not 1, not 2, but 5 alien women waiting in the hallway. They all shared the same elegant bone structure as the first woman, the same long ears, the same pale skin, but their expressions varied wildly. One looked stern enough to command a platoon. Another hid behind her sister's shoulder like the door might bite. A third stared at me with the curiosity of someone wondering if humans shed their skin annually. The fourth giggled for no discernible reason. And the fifth looked me up and down and asked, dead serious, "Are you the one who gives food freely? You look smaller than expected." Excuse me," I replied, suddenly aware of how poorly I was dressed. Relief workers didn't get many opportunities to look heroic. The stern one stepped forward. "You must come with us." "Oh, must I?" "You know, usually I like to be taken out to lunch before strange groups of women give me orders." They did not laugh. Not even the giggling one. Without waiting for my permission, probably because it was apparent I was too confused to give any, they ushered me down the corridor. I followed partly because I didn't want to offend them, partly because the stern one looked like she could break me in half using only her disappointment, and partly because curiosity had always been my most persistent flaw. They led me through forgotten parts of Haven 9, past inactive cargo lifts and sealed bulkheads, until the air grew cooler and the light thinner. I recognized the route. We were approaching the abandoned agricultural sector, the Agri-D as the station workers called it. It had been shut down after a fungal outbreak decades ago, though rumors said the plant still grew in the dark, glowing with strange, unapproved biochemistry. Great place for ghost stories. Less great place for hikes. When the sisters pried open a corroded maintenance door and ushered me inside, I braced for dust, decay, and maybe a mutant tomato. Instead, I stepped into a garden of soft, luminous vines that swayed like underwater kelp. Flowering orbs pulsed with gentle biolight, casting the space in blues and greens. Makeshift housing pods, pieced together from old hydroponic tanks, lined the temple-like structure. The air smelled fresh, impossibly so for a shut-down wing. "This is yours?" I asked. "Home," said the anxious one, her long ears lifting slightly with pride. A gentle voice answered from behind me. "Our sanctuary." I turned and found her, the first woman I fed. Up close and fed, she looked less like a shadow and more like someone waking from a very long nightmare. Her long ears rose with caution and gratitude. I'm Serial, she said softly, and you have fulfilled a sacred vow. I blinked. By feeding you? She nodded. I tried to laugh it off. I do that a lot. It's called compassion. Or poor planning. But Cyriel's gaze held an intensity that softened none of her seriousness. Among our people, food given in a moment of true desperation binds the giver to the receiver. You have invoked the debt bond. She hesitated. It cannot be undone. The sisters surrounded me, some hopeful, some solemn, one now picking bioluminescent petals off a vine as if preparing for a wedding, which I sincerely prayed was not symbolic. So, what exactly does this bond entail? I asked. Serial lowered her head slightly, her voice steady. It means you belong with us, and we must show you what that means. My legs wobbled, my stomach sank. My brain whispered, David, you have made a terrible series of lunch-related decisions. But Serial's faint smile, fragile, genuine, kept me from running. And that was how I learned that feeding a stranger on Haven 9 could alter the trajectory of your entire life, or at least guarantee you'd never eat alone again. The sisters guided me deeper into their hidden refuge, moving with the quiet confidence of people who had memorized every shadow. My footsteps sounded embarrassingly loud compared to their soft, almost gliding stride. I tried matching their grace once, but after nearly tripping over a glowing vine, I decided I would let them lead, and I would simply try not to die. The bioluminescent plants swayed gently as we passed, reacting to our presence with pulses of pale green and blue light. It felt like walking through a forest of curious fireflies that had evolved a sense of personal space. Serial walked beside me, her expression calm, though her long ears twitched whenever one of her sisters whispered too loudly. The giggling one, whose name I still didn't know because she kept distracting herself with shiny objects, kept poking a vine that responded by tightening into a coil. The stern one gave her a glare sharp enough to cut steel, and the vine drooped as if it preferred not to get caught in the crossfire. We rebuilt this place after the collapse, Serial said softly. It was abandoned, but the old roots still live beneath the soil. We helped them wake again. You revived the plants? I asked, genuinely impressed. I can barely keep a desk fern alive. The anxious sister whispered, Desk ferns do not scream when neglected. These do. I stopped walking. I'm sorry, what? The sisters nodded in solemn unison. Serial stepped closer, her voice gentle. Do not worry, they only scream when you cut them. That does not make me feel better. One of the glowing orbs drifted near my face, its soft light reflecting in Cyril's eyes. She lifted it carefully and set it back on a vine, as if tucking a child into bed. I realized then that their sanctuary was more than a hiding place. It was a living thing they nurtured with devotion and maybe mild plant-related threats. They brought me into a central clearing where remnants of an old hydroponic temple had been reshaped into a living hall. The sweeping arches still stood, covered in vines that wrapped around the beams like constellations. Cracked stone tiles were arranged in a circle, and faint runes glowed beneath them, ancient markings pulsing in a slow rhythm that somehow matched the hum of the station beyond. Serial motioned for me to sit on a cushion made of woven vines. I sat carefully, half expecting the cushion to insult me or swallow me whole. To my relief, it simply sighed, a long, gusty exhale before settling. It does that, Serial said when my eyes widened. It enjoys warmth. Great, so my chair likes me. Already a healthier relationship than my last job. The sisters gathered around, forming a half circle. The giggling one sat too close, staring at me as if waiting for me to perform tricks. The stern one watched me like she expected me to confess to something terrible. The curious one poked my elbow once, then nodded seriously as if she had learned something crucial. Cyril placed a carved bowl of fruit between us, each orb glowing faintly. Eat, she said. You are safe here. One of the fruits shook slightly and I hesitated. Is it supposed to vibrate? It is excited, the anxious sister said. Ah, of course. Excited fruit. A normal experience. Serial sat across from me, her posture regal despite her worn clothing. You gave sustenance freely, she said. Not out of duty, not out of expectation, simply because another suffered. I shrugged, embarrassed. It seemed like the right thing to do. That is precisely why it matters. Her ears lifted with sincerity. Most do not act without calculation. You did. The stern sister added, even though humans are usually loud and confusing. Thank you. That was not praise. Well, I'll take it anyway. Cereal reached out and touched the glowing bowl. The fruit dimmed, then brightened, responding to her touch like living lanterns. We are of the house of Lithari, she said, once honored among our people, but now forgotten, exiled. Her voice softened. I sensed the weight behind the words, a sorrow too deep for a simple retelling. I waited, not pushing her, letting her speak at her own pace. Our colony fell, she continued. War, famine, betrayal. We fled here, a place indifferent enough to let us disappear. The anxious sister whispered, but not safe from those who hunt us. Hunt? Wait, hunt you? I asked. As in, pursuit? Danger? Blasters involved? Sometimes, Cyril admitted. I tried to keep my voice steady, though internally my nerves were playing a dramatic drum solo. And you brought me here? Why exactly? I'm very flattered, but I'm more of a paperwork guy than a charge into danger kind of guy. Cyril's long ears lowered slightly, an expression of hesitation, maybe vulnerability. You must understand something important. The debt bond you invoked is not symbolic. It is woven into us. It binds us to you, and you to us. The giggling sister clapped her hands. He is our kindred stranger, the prophecy one. I am absolutely not prophecy material, I insisted. I once set my shirt on fire reheating soup. Cyril smiled, softly, almost imperceptibly. Perhaps that is precisely why. I looked around at the glowing vines, the quiet sanctuary, the 6 women watching me with hope and fear intertwined. How am I supposed to help you? I asked quietly. Cyril leaned forward. By staying, by listening, by learning who we are. The vines rustled around us, glowing gently as if urging me to choose. And somehow, despite every rational part of my mind, screaming that I should run far, far away, I didn't move. Because in that moment, surrounded by light and uncertainty, I felt something tug at me. Something that said their story was now tied to mine, whether I understood it or not. I woke the next morning to the gentle sound of something humming near my ear. Not a machine, not the grinding, coughing, metallic noises Haven 9 usually produced. This was softer, almost melodic. When I opened my eyes, I found a glowing vine dangling inches from my face like a curious pet. Its bioluminescent petals fluttered as if sniffing me. I raised a hand cautiously. Good morning. Please don't eat me. The vine quivered, then retreated into the ceiling, muttering. Yes, muttering. I didn't know plants could mutter, but I was learning a lot these days. I sat up on the woven nest of cushions Cyril had given me for the night. They were surprisingly comfortable once you accepted that they occasionally adjusted themselves. One of them shifted under me now, lifting slightly to fluff itself. Thank you, I said. A soft voice answered from the doorway. It knows you are awake. It wishes to be helpful. Cyril stepped inside, the soft green glow of the sanctuary casting shifting light over her pale skin. Her long ears, more relaxed this morning, angled forward with a calm attentiveness. She held a steaming cup of something that smelled suspiciously like mint mixed with starship coolant. It's a morning infusion, she said. Good for grounding the mind. Will it melt my teeth? Only if brewed incorrectly. I hesitated. Did you brew it incorrectly? Her lips curved into the faintest smile. I did not. I took the cup and sipped. My sinuses immediately opened. My eyes watered, and every bad decision I had ever made revisited me in chronological order. When I finally managed to inhale again, Cyril offered a sympathetic nod. It is stronger for humans, she said gently. You don't say. The anxious sister, Yoleth I'd finally learned, peeked around the corner. She looked relieved to see me alive, then panicked when I waved. We have prepared the hall, she whispered before vanishing again, leaving a few glowing spores drifting in her wake, like she'd exited at high speed. Cyril motioned for me to follow. I stood, brushed off a few overly affectionate vines, and walked beside her to the central clearing. The other 5 sisters were already there, each sitting with a different degree of seriousness. The stern one, Kalira, watched me with arms crossed. The giggling one, Mira, was trying to balance a glowing fruit on her head. The curious one, Selai, scribbled notes on a scrap of synthetic paper while staring at my feet for some reason. And the last sister, Taryn, was sharpening a blade made of crystallized vine resin, humming an unsettling lullaby. "Please sit," Cyril said, gesturing to a cushion that sighed when I approached. I sat carefully. "What exactly are we doing?" I asked, eyeing the floating lights swirling above us. "It is time," Cyril said, "to explain the truth of what you invoked." Kalira stepped forward, her tone formal. "Among our people, giving food in a moment of desperation is a vow older than recorded history, a bond of life to life. Once invoked, it shapes the path of both." I tried to smile. "So, like a cultural thank you note?" "No," Kalira said flatly. "More binding, less optional." Mira leaned forward eagerly. "You're our kindred stranger. The prophecy said—" "Mira," Cyril warned gently. Mira sat back, though her ears still twitched with unspent enthusiasm. Cyril turned to me again. "Our people believe the kindred stranger appears only when a great turning point approaches, a moment when our fate can shift." "I promise you, I am terrible at shifting fate," I said. "I can't even shift laundry before it smells like sadness." So I scribbled this down. "This prophecy," I continued nervously, "how certain is it? Prophecies are usually vague, right? Lots of room for interpretation? Maybe it meant someone like me? A metaphorical me?" "The text was extremely specific," Cyril said. "Oh," Kalira added, "down to the manner of your clumsy walk." I threw my hands up. "That was one time with one vine." Selai scribbled faster. Cyril lifted her hand to calm the room. "David, what you did, feeding me when I had nothing, triggered a vow we cannot ignore. It ties us together. But understand this, the bond does not trap you. It simply connects us." "That sounds suspiciously like a trap," I murmured. "It is a connection of trust," Cyril insisted gently, "of responsibility, of shared future." My heart thudded. Shared future? As in, I have to become something? Or do something? Or be someone? "Yes," Cyril said softly, "but not today." Taryn finally spoke, her voice low and steady. "Many will not accept your presence among us. Many would use you, or use us against you." "Wonderful," I muttered. "I always wanted enemies I never met." Cyril knelt in front of me, her long ears lowering in sincere humility. "You are not our prisoner. You are not our servant. You are simply needed." "Needed," I repeated softly. "Yes," Cyril said, "and you may choose how to face the bond. Walk away and we will bear the sorrow. Stay, and we will share our truth, our burden, and our hope." The glowing vines around us pulsed as if the sanctuary itself waited for my answer. I swallowed hard. "I need to understand more." Mira clapped. "He's staying for the explanation. That counts as step 1 in the prophecy." "Mira," Kalira growled. "What? It does." Despite everything, fear, confusion, the overwhelming strangeness, I felt a laugh rising in my chest. And Cyril, seeing it, let herself smile too. "Very well," she said. "Then today you learn the weight of the bond." The vines brightened, the runes glowed, and I suddenly wondered if breakfast had prepared me nearly enough for whatever came next. Cyril led me away from the central hall and into a quieter section of the sanctuary, where the glowing vines dimmed to a soft twilight hue. The others followed at a respectful distance, except Mira, who walked so close behind me that her breath stirred the back of my neck. When I glanced over my shoulder, she smiled innocently, then tripped over her own feet and nearly took me down with her. Kellera dragged her upright without breaking stride. "We will show him the truth," Cyril said, as though preparing me for a museum exhibit rather than whatever this was. "But first you should eat." "I'm not sure I trust food that glows," I answered. "It only glows if it's healthy." That does not make me feel better. Yolith hurried ahead and collected a bowl of something steaming gently. It shimmered in a suspicious lavender glow, and when she offered it to me, the bowl vibrated like it wanted to purr. I accepted it because I didn't want to offend the bowl or the chef or the living vines that I was fairly certain could strangle me respectfully if they wished. I took a cautious sip. My tongue tingled, my eyes watered, and all the stress in my body evaporated in one unstoppable exhale. "Okay," I said, blinking. "I think my soul just sneezed." Siriel nodded. "It cleanses the spirit. Is that why the ceiling is moving?" "It is not." That was good enough for me. She motioned for us to continue deeper into the sanctuary, toward an archway lined with faintly glowing runes. The air grew cooler, carrying a scent like rain hitting metal. The sisters' steps slowed as we approached, each of them growing quieter, more serious. "This is the Hall of Echoes," Taryn said softly. "What remains of our lineage's memory." I swallowed the last of my glowing soup in an attempt at bravery, but it came out more like, right, hall, echoes, memory, no problem. Siriel touched her palm to the center of the arch. The runes flared to life, spiraling with soft light. The doors, otherwise indistinguishable from the surrounding vines, unwound themselves like petals opening. Inside, the chamber was circular, walls covered in intricate patterns that pulsed like breathing constellations. In the center stood a crystalline pillar, humming faintly. "This looks like a place where something extremely important happens," I whispered, "or where you trap annoying guests." "Both," Mira said cheerfully. Kalira elbowed her. Cyril approached the pillar, her long ears lifting with a mix of reverence and sorrow. "This is our ancestral archive, a living record of our bloodline. It holds the truth of our curse." The words settled heavily between us. Curse. That was never good. It was almost never followed by something comforting like, "that gives us the power to bake infinite cookies." Cyril placed her hand on the pillar. The chamber shifted, dimming around us as the patterns on the walls brightened. A soft light spread from the pillar like ripples in water, revealing fragmented images. Figures dancing, fighting, building, fleeing. Generations of long-eared figures, their faces proud and then fearful, then hardened by survival. "It began before our grandparents' were born," Cyril said. "A flaw within our blood, a mutation once harmless, now dangerous. Each generation weakened. Our fertility dwindled until our lineage was declared unfit." Mira raised her hand. "We prefer the term selectively challenged." Kellera covered her face with her palm. Cyril continued. "Those who wished to erase our house used the curse as justification. We fled. We hid. And now only we remain." The images flickered, shifting to scenes of their colony falling, fires consuming towers, escape ships launching amid chaos, people scattering across the galaxy. I felt my chest tighten. I'd heard stories from refugees before, but never wrapped in this mix of sorrow and ancient prophecy. "And humans?" I asked quietly. Cyril turned to me, eyes reflecting the pillar's light. "Humans share a compatible genetic structure with the cured version of the mutation, with our ancestors' earlier genome." I blinked. "So, humans are basically an older software version of your biology?" Mira gasped. "Yes, exactly, ancient humans." "That's not what I—" Salai began scribbling again. "We must record this. Humans, version 1. "Please don't write that down," I said. "Humans barely handle version 1 of themselves as it is." Cyril stepped closer, her voice lowering. "A child born of our lineage, and a human would be free of the flaw. Whole, strong, a restoration of what we once were." My heartbeat quickened. "So that's why you were all watching me like I was a rare fruit in a market." "Not entirely," Cyril said. Mira raised her hand again. "Mostly, though." Kellera's glare could melt titanium. Cyril rested her hand lightly on the pillar, calming the swirling images. "David, the prophecy of the kindred stranger is not about offspring. It is about trust. The one who gives without expectation, who stands without lineage binding him, becomes the equalizing force, the catalyst." I exhaled slowly. "So you're not asking me to—" "You know—" Mira opened her mouth. Kellera covered it before she could speak. "No," Cyril said. That choice belongs to time and to fate, not to prophecy. I felt tension drain from my shoulders, replaced immediately by a different kind of nervousness. Then what does this bond require of me? Serial stepped closer, close enough that I could see faint flecks of silver in her irises. It requires that you do not turn away from us, that you do not fear what we are, that you accept our trust and allow us to share our burden with you. I hesitated, then nodded. I can do that, Mira cheered. Yoleth clapped quietly. Even Terran's serious expression softened for a moment. Serial touched the pillar once more, letting the chamber lights dim to a gentle glow. Then you are no longer a visitor, she said softly. You are part of our house. A vine brushed my shoulder like a greeting. I had a sudden, undeniable realization. My life had been strange before. Now it was something else entirely. The sisters insisted I rest after the revelations in the Hall of Echoes, but rest was difficult when your mind kept replaying every ancient prophecy, every glowing ancestor hologram, and every instance of Mira nearly blurting something catastrophic. I lay on the cushioned nest long enough for it to grow bored and adjust itself for the 10th time, then gave up and wandered into the garden clearing. The air shimmered with the soft pulse of bioluminescent fruit, and somewhere above, the vines whispered like gossiping old women. Cyriel found me sitting on a stone ledge, staring at a cluster of glowing flowers that seemed to be bowing politely at me. Her steps were quiet, her long ears lifted in that serene, attentive way that made her look both wise and perpetually on the verge of hearing something important. She carried a small metal device I recognized, a portable nutrient analyzer from the relief deck. I borrowed this, she said, to help you understand what we meant earlier. I blinked. If this is about the prophecy, I should warn you I scored poorly in anything involving destiny. She sat beside me, her presence gentle. It is simply to show you something. She held out the device. Take a sample. I reached toward the nearest plant, then hesitated. Does it scream? Only when deeply offended. And if I offend it? It will forgive you. Eventually. That was not comforting, but I plucked a tiny glowing petal anyway. The device hummed as it absorbed the sample, projections forming in the air, alien symbols intertwined with human-coded diagrams, merging into something I could almost understand. Serial pointed to a spiraling strand. This is the flaw that burdens our bloodline. Unstable. Failing. She tapped another strand, one I recognized unmistakably. Human DNA. Your people lack this flaw. More importantly, your sequence stabilizes ours. It strengthens what has weakened over generations. I stared at the projection, trying to process the enormity without letting panic burst out of me like confetti. So humans are genetic duct tape? Cyril paused, then gave a long, thoughtful nod. A poetic analogy. I wasn't aiming for poetry. You achieved it anyway. Her faint smile made my chest tighten, for reasons I absolutely refused to explore yet. She withdrew the device, letting the projection fade into drifting particles. You must understand, she said, voice softening. Our people once worshipped the echo of this compatibility. Some turned it into prophecy, some into science, some into an excuse for cruelty. And you, I asked quietly. I turned it into hope. Before I could respond, Mira barreled around the corner, breathless. Serial! David! You have to come! Kellira is arguing with the vines again. That is not surprising, Serial said. This time the vines are arguing back. That was surprising. We hurried after Mira, weaving through the sanctuary until we found Kellira standing rigidly before a thick cluster of vines coiling in irritation. The vines rustled in sharp, choppy pulses, like angry chattering. Kellira's jaw was clenched. They claim, she said stiffly, that David sat in their sleeping cycle. I didn't mean to, I blurted out. A cushion dragged me. The vines rustled louder. Serial sighed and stepped forward. He is new. He did not know. A long moment passed. Then, with the dramatic flair of a disappointed grandmother, the vines shifted back into a resting position. Mira whispered, They forgive you, but only because Serial asked nicely. I'll send them an apology fruit basket, I muttered. The tension eased, and Serial gently touched my arm. There is something else you should see. She led me to a smaller chamber where the sisters had gathered around a table crafted from fused resin. Strange artifacts were spread out. Old tools, fragments of armor, preserved insignias. Terran polished a cracked emblem while Salai sketched it. Yolith watched me with an expression torn between hope and fear. These are what remain of our former house, Cyril said. Symbols of who we were before exile. Terran handed me a piece of worn metal, engraved with a crest shaped like interlocking stars. Our family once protected an entire sector, she said. Now we only protect each other. Yolith added timidly, we do not expect you to fight with us, or for us, only to stand beside us. Mira leaned in, and not run away screaming. Kalira exhaled sharply. Preferably. My first instinct was humor. My second was terror. But beneath both was something steadier, something growing since the moment I gave Siriel my ration pack. I'm not a warrior, I said quietly. I don't have training or weapons or dramatic action movie instincts. But I can stand with you. I want to. Cyril's expression softened, her long ears lifting in relief. That, she said, is all the bond asks. Selai lifted a thin tablet. But you should know, some within the station have begun inspection sweeps of this sector. If they discover us, Kalira finished grimly, they will remove us, force us onto relocation transports, and our sanctuary will be destroyed. Terran's grip tightened on her polished emblem. We will not let that happen. All eyes turned to me. Me, a relief worker armed with good intentions and questionable reflexes. I took a breath. Then let's keep them out. I know the maintenance routes, the inspection schedules, everything they rely on. Mira grinned. Our kindred stranger arrives with secret knowledge. It's not secret. It's just boring paperwork information. Secret enough for us? Cyril stepped closer, resting her hand lightly on mine. We do not need a savior. We need an ally. You've got one, I said. The room warmed, literally. A nearby vine pulsed with satisfaction, brushing my shoulder approvingly, like a cat claiming ownership. And as the sisters gathered around the old relics of their house, I realized something with absolute clarity. I wasn't helping strangers anymore. I was helping family. The first sign of trouble arrived in the form of a flickering red light pulsing faintly through the sanctuary vines. To me, it looked like a stressed firefly having a breakdown. To the sisters, it meant something far more serious. Cyriel's ears rose sharply. Kalira froze mid-step, and Mira, who had been trying to teach a vine to dance, immediately dropped into what she clearly thought was a combat stance. It looked more like she was preparing to leap into a swimming pool. They've begun an unscheduled sweep, Terran said, checking a small scanner made from repurposed station tech. The device buzzed irritably. Sector 14, 3 levels above us. That's too close, Cyril murmured. They never inspect this low. I swallowed hard. Well, someone must have complained, or filed a report, or, please don't be offended, smelled something glowing, Mira gasped. They can smell the glowing? Cyril, should we stop glowing? No, Kalira said flatly. We should not stop glowing. That is not how biology works. The vines around us rustled uneasily, their light dimming and brightening in restless waves. The sanctuary felt suddenly alive with tension. I reminded myself to breathe, preferably calmly, not like someone wheezing into a paper bag. We need to stall the inspection team, Terran said. Redirect them, confuse them, buy time. I raised a hesitant hand. I might actually be useful here. Kalira arched an eyebrow so sharply it could cut steel. Explain. I know the sweep routes, I said. The shortcuts, the blind spots, the places they avoid because the air recyclers make weird noises. They do make weird noises, Yolith whispered. Exactly, and I can use that. If I can get to the maintenance hub before the inspectors reach level 12, I can reroute them. Temporarily, just enough to make them think this whole sector is sealed for repairs. Cyril stepped closer, concern threading through her expression. It is dangerous. If they see you, they won't. I tried a confident smile. It felt more like a grimace. I'm a relief worker. My entire career is built on walking into places nobody should go and pretending I belong there. Selai scribbled something on her tablet. Probably human overconfidence detected. Siriel reached toward me, resting her fingers lightly on my sleeve. Take one of us with you. You should not go alone. I appreciate that, but blending in works better when I'm not accompanied by someone who looks like an elegant alien elf. Mira perked up. Elegant? Elf? Not the point, Kalira muttered. Siriel reluctantly nodded. Very well, but take this. She handed me a small crystalline bead. It will vibrate if danger approaches. The bead immediately vibrated. Not now, Siriel said sternly. It stopped. I tucked it into my pocket and took a steadying breath. The sisters gathered around, each one watching me with varying degrees of worry, hope, and in Mira's case, dramatic anticipation. I'll be back, I promised. You better, Mira said. I already told the vines you're part of the family. The vines rustled approvingly, which was both heartwarming and terrifying. I slipped out through a narrow maintenance hatch, climbing into the network of ducts that webbed beneath the agricultural sector. The air smelled of dust, old coolant, and faint ion residue. Panels hummed, circuits flickered, and somewhere nearby, something skittered loudly before retreating. I refused to think about what it was. The station's inspection beacon echoed down the corridor, a sharp, rhythmic ping that bounced between metal walls. I crawled through a vent, dropped quietly onto an access walkway, and approached the maintenance hub. Voices echoed. Damn! The inspectors had arrived early. I ducked behind a console, peeking out. 3 officers in gray uniforms scanned the area with handheld devices. Their helmets gleamed with cold, efficient lights, like judgmental flashlights with authority issues. Sector readings are unstable, one officer said. Radiation spikes coming from lower levels. Not radiation, just vines having emotional reactions again. We need to check below, another insisted. Panic rose in me like a badly timed elevator. I slipped to the secondary console, praying the interface still accepted relief worker credentials. Recognize me, I whispered desperately. Come on, I fill out your forms. I sign your error logs. Just once in your life, help me. The console blinked, then chimed. Access granted. I nearly kissed the screen. I initiated a reroute, flooding Sector 14 with maintenance alerts, system warnings, and automated repair notices. A dozen blaring notifications lit up the inspector's devices. Level 12 is sealed? The lead officer frowned. Looks like a power conduit failure. And gas leaks. And mold contamination. And what in stars? Feral maintenance drones. Okay, I might have overdone it. The inspectors exchanged a silent look that said, not today, then turned away. We'll report it to engineering, their leader said. We're skipping this section. My knees nearly gave out. I waited until their footsteps faded, then exhaled a shaky breath. Still alive, I whispered. Good job, David. You hacked bureaucracy. The deadliest foe of all. The vibration bead in my pocket pulsed lightly, once, twice, then stilled. I didn't know if that meant approval or sarcasm. I made my way back through the ducts, heart pounding but lighter. When I emerged into the sanctuary again, the sisters rushed toward me. Siriel stepped in front, her relief visible in every softened line of her face. You returned. Told you I would. Mira flung her arms around me so fast I flinched. Our hero. I am absolutely not. Kalira placed a hand on my shoulder. You did well. Coming from her, it felt like receiving a medal. Siriel's fingers brushed my arm again, gentle and grateful. Because of you, we remain hidden. Safe. For now. For now, I repeated. The vines around us glowed brighter, swaying like they sensed the shift. We all felt it, the change in the sanctuary's air. A turning point, a spark, a beginning of something neither prophecy nor logic could fully shape. And deep inside, I realized the truth. I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of the inspectors, not of the bond, not of belonging. The day after the inspection sweep felt strangely calm, like the station itself was holding its breath. The sisters moved with a softer ease as though an invisible weight had been lifted from them. Even the vines seemed gentler, glowing in warm pulses that followed me whenever I passed. Mira claimed they were bond-sniffing, which I prayed was not a real phrase in their culture. I woke early, not because the cushion decided to rearrange my spine again, but because Cyril stood quietly nearby, watching me with an expression I hadn't seen before. Peaceful, relieved, maybe even proud. Her long ears lifted when I sat up. "The sanctuary feels different today," she said, "like it can breathe." "Good, Anna," I answered. "Breathing is one of my top 3 requirements for a home." She gave me a soft smile, then motioned for me to follow. "There is something we wish to show you." The sisters were gathered in the central clearing, their expressions bright, hopeful, and surprisingly coordinated. Even Kalira looked slightly less like she was preparing for war. Mira bounced excitedly. "We made something! For you!" I half expected a glowing fruit wreath or possibly a vine that hugged people without warning. Instead, Yolith held a small, carefully carved object, a pendant shaped like the intertwined star crest I had seen among their family relics. But it was newly made, polished, and woven through with strands of living vine that glowed faintly. Cyril took it gently and stepped toward me. "This marks you as one of us, a member of our house, not by blood, not by prophecy, by choice." The weight of the moment pressed into my chest, warm and grounding. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Mira blurted out. "Say you'll wear it. Say you'll stay. Say—" Kalira covered her mouth. "Let him breathe." I held the pendant carefully, feeling the soft pulse of the living vine thread. "I'll wear it," I said, "and I'll stay, as long as you'll have me." The sisters reacted at once. Taryn nodded approvingly. Selai scribbled, "Official acceptance achieved." Yolith sighed in relief. Kellera gave a curt but sincere dip of her head, and Mira celebrated by hugging me hard enough that a nearby vine squeaked. Then Serial stepped closer, her voice lowering. "There is something more." The vines around us dimmed, as though creating space for the moment. "You asked once what the bond required," she said. "Now you know. Trust, presence, choice." Her eyes softened, silver flecks shimmering in the glow. "But you have given us more than that. You protected us. You treated us as equals, not burdens. You gave us back a sense of belonging we thought we had lost forever." I swallowed. "You did the same for me. I came to the station to help, but I never expected to find a home here. Or people who—" My voice cracked a little, surprising me. "People who want me." Cyril stepped forward until our foreheads nearly touched. Her long ears tilted tenderly, a gesture I had learned meant deep sincerity. "You are ours, David, not as prophecy claimed, as we chose." Mira made a soft, dramatic gasp, earning another sharp elbow from Kellera. The sanctuary vines brightened around us, glowing in gentle waves. I felt something settle inside me. Not the frantic confusion of the first days, not the weight of destiny, but a quiet, steady acceptance. Belonging. Taryn broke the silence with her usual directness. "There will be more sweeps, more dangers. We cannot hide here forever." "She's right," Cyril said gently, "but with you we have more options. We can negotiate. We can find allies. We can step into the open when we choose to, not when we are forced." "And you'd do that?" I asked. "Leave the sanctuary?" "Eventually," Cyril said. "Together." Selai chimed in. "Also, you now qualify for house membership duties. We'll assign tasks." "Tasks?" I repeated, alarmed. Mira beamed. "Yes, important ones." Kellera added, "Do not worry. We will start you with something you cannot ruin." "That is not reassuring." Cyril touched my arm again, grounding me. "You do not walk this path alone." I looked around at them, 6 women bound by loss, strength, and stubborn resilience, and somehow bound now to me. "We're a strange family," I said softly. "Deeply," Taryn agreed. "The strangest," Mira added proudly. "But ours," Cyril finished. A warmth rose in my chest, steady and certain. "Then let's build something together. A future that isn't written by prophecy or fear." Cyril nodded. "A future of our choosing." The vines rustled in agreement like a chorus of leafy approval. The sanctuary lights brightened, casting soft colors across the sisters' faces. Yolith wiped her eyes. Kalira pretended she wasn't doing the same. Mira hugged me again for good measure, And in that moment, in the glowing heart of a forgotten agricultural temple, on a station that had once felt cold and indifferent, I understood fully how much I had changed. I wasn't the wandering relief worker anymore, offering ration packs and hoping someone noticed. I wasn't someone searching for purpose. I had found it, in the laughter and the danger, in the strange glowing plants that whispered secrets, and in the 6 women who saw me not as an outsider, but as family. Serial placed the pendant around my neck, her fingers lingering with gentle certainty. "Welcome home, David," she said. For the first time in a long while, the WWW